Welcome everyone to Texas. Or in context of our adventures, welcome back to Texas. We were last in the Lone Star State to drive Circuit of the Americas and have returned not quite 3 years later to put another pin in our map, this time at the newest track between the Red River and Rio Grande and the 37th track on our lap of the world, G2 Motorsports Park. That's Lou Gigliotti, a 3-time World Challenge champion driver, owner of the only customer Corvette team to ever out-qualify the factory in the same equipment, and one-time purveyor of performance parts as founder of LG Motorsports. And this land, I'm told, was supposed to be his retirement home. The driveway looks fun. Original intent aside, the land on which G2 Motorsports Park sits has been talked about as a racetrack since at least 2016. Located in Anna, Texas, north of Dallas near McKenna, we even noted this project, then known as LG Motorsports Park, in a video about tracks and development that we put out back in 2020. At the time, it honestly got a little hate, with some taking the stance of, yeah, I'll believe it when I see it, due to the long gestation period of the project. Of course, facilities of this scale don't get funded and built overnight, but it was only another year or two before the haters were obliged to believe what they saw when the rechristened G2 Motorsports Park officially broke ground in early 2022. Members got to take their initial laps by late 2023 on what I can maybe best describe as the smallest big track I've driven. G2's layout is a masterclass in maximizing a property with 3.1 miles of big track tarmac that we'll get to later, tucked into just 180 acres while still managing to shoehorn in some substantial track-adjacent infrastructure. Although a new facility, by our visit in 2024, the build-out to G2 had pushed well past just being a ribbon of racetrack on an otherwise empty lot. Trackside amenities center around G2's 25,000 square foot clubhouse and event center that provides a welcome haven of air-conditioned space after some hot laps in equally toasty Texas weather. You won't have to bake in the sun or sweat through those classroom sessions between run groups at G2. This centerpiece building also provides exclusive spaces for members at the track and a social nexus for any attending the non-track events that G2 hosts, such as corporate functions, parties, and cars and coffee. Alongside the clubhouse are 2 garage blocks that flank a large and fully paved paddock space. Construction is still ongoing, so expect the number of garages and the paddock to grow, and that's before we get to the rest of the property. If you'd like to spend some real quality time at G2, the private garage condos, while certainly not cheap, are actually pretty reasonable in context of trackside condos and villas across the US. Thanks to Lexi, G2's director of operations, we were able to tour a couple of units in progress. Sizes vary, but any of them could accommodate multiple cars, full-size lifts, and be finished to spec, as shown here in a more current video from a build partner. All of them have great views of the on-track action, in which you'd be able to frequently partake since any garage condo purchase includes a VIP membership at no extra charge. Being transparent along those lines, I've mentioned members and membership a couple of times, but I want to make it clear that at least as of this publishing, you don't have to be a member at G2 to get on the track. Members definitely have more access to the track and facilities, but basic activity at G2 is not members only, with the track putting on their own non-exclusive events as well as playing host to organizers like our friends at Chin Track Days. Membership, of course, does have its benefits, with even the lowest tier netting you at least 80 possible track days each year, guest access, and discounts on track car rentals when you decide to fly in. Plus, if you do join at the VIP level, and then later decide to buy one of the few remaining garage condos, your initiation fee can be put towards that. This policy was a friendly surprise compared to some other track membership structures that I've seen. If you're interested in a tour or exploring membership, you can find a link to G2's site as well as contact information in the video description. Speaking of exploring, our own visit to G2 and a portion of the footage that you're watching came thanks to the NSX Club of America. Their annual marquee event, NSXPO, made its way to Grapevine, Texas in 2024. G2, being close by in Anna, opened their doors to over 100 NSXs and owners for 2 days of on-track fun before the event shifted to other venues for social gatherings. If you missed it, Liz and I vlogged our way through the entire weekend elsewhere on the channel. If you'd like to attend an NSXPO yourself, you can find information on the NSX Club and NSXPO at nsxca.org. Now let's jump on board our own NSX and take a lap of G2 to see what Texas's newest track has to offer. As we pit out, it's worth noting that G2 has a few possible track configurations and can theoretically run 2 events simultaneously between the east and west courses. We had the run of the place though, so got to drive on the entire combined layout minus the east chicane. For reference, I'm going to use the turn numbers as shown on G2's own track maps, but we'll use east and west to distinguish while adding a 12 east for the crossover turn here. Our lap of G2's combined layout starts in the west pit straight headed south. Turn 1 west has a pretty generous radius, so you can carry some good speed through it, but mind your left side tires on exit as there's only a few yards of grass between you and the guardrail here. For turn 2 west, you'll want to prioritize exit speed over entry speed as it leads onto effectively a straight, with turns 3 and 4 west I suspect being flat out in most cars. The 5 West complex requires some balance as you can carry some speed into A, but you then need to get the car both slowed down and rotated to a late apex on B to limit your track out and optimize your line into 6 West, which was near but not quite flat out for me and leads onto a short straight. Seven West is a narrow entry, but the track opens significantly on exit into 8 West. I opted to give up some entry speed to get a later apex on 7, after which I could keep it pinned through 8, only tracking out all the way after clearing 8. If not for being polite to our friend here, I'd want to be a little further left, turning into 9 West, exercising a little patience mid-turn to exit with the car parallel to where the curbing necks in on the left. I saw my fastest speeds on this north straight as we transition onto the east course. Mind the crest and downslope on the brakes, but otherwise turns 2 and 3 east are almost one big turn. I stayed a car width or so off the curb through 2 and then clipped on 3, and I probably could have carried more speed than I did. And you'd want to, as you're immediately back on a nearly as long straight before arriving at 7 east, which puts you over a crest at some speed. Coming off the brakes, I'd recommend avoiding the inside curb on 7 as you apex, and then make sure you're straight as you start to brake for the uphill autocross section that is turns 8 through 11 east. Clearing that complex puts you onto the east pit straight, and in our case looking for a left turn with no number that I'm calling 12 east as we transition back on the west course. This turn is pretty fast, but I always felt like I was too early or there wasn't as much room as I thought on exit. Turn 12 west that follows is our carousel style turn. It's heavily cambered, so you brake late and only enough to get the car pointed downhill, and you can then power your way through the bowl and out the other side towards 13 west, which you'll want to take with the aim of keeping left on the exit to prioritize the entry into the very tight 14 west, which is the 22nd and last turn on our lap of G2 Motorsports Park. I was pretty happy with that 2-minute 31-second time in just 2 days of trying, but if you want to see someone go faster, G2's channel features Mr. Gigliotti himself going many seconds quicker, while comparatively looking like he's taking a nap in a 911, but I suppose he would make it look easy. Now that we've actually done a lap, let's talk a little bit more about the layout that we just drove. The design comes thanks to a combination of creative input by Mr. Gigliotti, initial engineering and concepts by Tilka, and some later revisions by Bob Barnard to arrive at the track layout that we drove. Lou wanted to pay homage to some of his favorite tracks from during his driving career, so among others, turns 5A and 5B at G2 share a profile with turns 5A and 5B at Motorsport, with admittedly less elevation change. Similarly, turn 12 west has a significant bowl shape to it, reminiscent of the Nürburgring's carousel turns. The keen-eyed may spot some other inspired bends, but what's most important is that G2's 22 total turns throw a lot of variety at you. Slow turns, fast turns, flat-out turns, turns that open, turns that tighten, double apex turns, blind turns, turns in dips, and turns over crests. On that last point, for a track built on what is objectively pretty flat land, they've managed to make elevation changes a far more significant factor than you might expect with some fairly steep elements in places. All of that is probably an overlong way of saying it's fun, it's challenging, and achieving a fast lap will require more nuance than you might expect from looking at a 2D track map. If you'd like to see more consecutive laps of G2, consider subscribing so you don't miss our forthcoming Just the Laps video, which will lean more heavily on the driving portion of our visit. Back off the track, and thanks in large part to the first world amenities, our weekend at G2 was honestly amazing. The ability to literally chill between sessions in the clubhouse went a long way to stave off fatigue. I was even giving taxi rides at the end of the second day. Of course, NSXPO was always a treat, and this year didn't disappoint. In addition to seeing a lot of our NSX family, Acura wheeled out an NSX GT3 Evo, sadly for display only, but it was fun to look at. Lunch both days was also catered in by the club with help from the staff at G2. Speaking of the staff at G2, obviously thanks to Mr. Gigliotti for hosting us along with the event at his track. Thanks to all of the corner workers, as always, for keeping things safe, and a particular shout to Lexi, who I mentioned earlier, an absolute rock star. She helped provide a lot of the information that I'm sharing, along with the garage tour and pitching in with an extra hand during the event, in addition to her day job running the place. We certainly will look forward to any opportunity to come back, or at least support their efforts from afar in the meantime. Bringing things to a close, it seems somewhat appropriate, if not poetic, that G2 is the first new track we've driven since our NSX's resurrection, and that it was during an NSXPO. We broke the car in the same year that G2 broke ground, and the track was being built in the same span of time that the car was getting rebuilt. NSXPO 2022 put our mission on hold, but NSXPO 2024 marks its resumption in earnest. Thanks for watching.